Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for another one of our user group meetings here. We appreciate you spending some time with us here during this holiday season, busy end of year season. We're excited to have another, I think, great program of content and information for everyone here again this month. We're excited to have you all here for the next couple of hours. If you have to jump off at some point, it's okay. We will be, as we've done the last couple of times, we'll be sending links out to the individual presentations afterwards. So if you have to jump off, that's okay. We understand. We know there's a lot going on, but appreciate you all joining us here this afternoon for another one for our year-end RPP User Group webinar. I'm Justin Allen with Real Strategies. I'm a senior strategic consultant. And for those of you who don't know me, before I joined Real Strategies, I worked as a GAD, Government Affairs Director, for the Salt Lake Board of Realtors, and also helped out with the Utah Association of Realtors and NAR as a consultant as well. Just wanted to give that introduction. We've got a great program scheduled. I'll run down. Let me get my little list here of the agenda. The first presentation that we have is about some insights on how to run a successful key contact program. We're going to have Brandon Fenton, who is with the Kansas Association of Realtors, who has been managing their state level FPC program or key contact program. And they've been utilizing our key contact score and a key contact platform, management platform for that program. And so Brandon Fenton and then Philip Craiglow with Real Strategies, he manages our data and tech team. They are going to be tag teaming on the first presentation to run through and talk about this key contact program. We actually have an updated new version of the key contact platform that we are onboarding Kansas and other associations onto for 2025. And so Phil's going to give a little preview of that platform as well. After that, we're going to have Robert Proctor, who is the GAD for in the Dane County, Madison area of Wisconsin for the local association of realtors there. And Robert is going to be talking about what he has done over the past couple of years. We asked Robert to present here today because I've been really intrigued by the way that their local association has worked with Dane County and Madison. Obviously, a lot of some NIMBY forces in those communities, just like we see all around the country, but how he has utilized a lot of different interesting approaches, coalition building, survey research, educational campaigns, issue advocacy campaigns, independent expenditures, a little bit of everything to move the ball forward and improve their regulatory climate in Dane County and Madison specifically. Following Robert, we're going to have Nathan Conrad from the Wisconsin State Association, WRA, who's going to share a cool project that we were able to help them with to improve the participation at their Hill Day and through some interesting new ways to do some member engagement. And so we appreciate Nathan joining us from the Wisconsin Realtors Association. At that point, we'll take a little step back for some Q&A. And then following that, we will have Coleman Bass and Christine Berger from our team. Coleman Bass is a communications guru. He's worked for big advertising agencies before being a part of our team. And of course, Christine Berger, many of you know, is a senior strategic consultant along with me. They're going to be sharing about our new digital advertising media buying platform that we rolled out this year and providing some information about that. We're really excited and think this is going to be a big game changer for how all of our clients do digital advertising going forward. and then we'll do some Q&A about that as well. And then finally, we will certainly, the last part of the agenda, but it's really not the least part of the agenda. We're going to have Joe Good and Sarah Stevenson from American Strategies share some insights that they have kind of seen this year, as they have done a lot of polling work on a variety of issues that are relevant to housing, housing inventory, housing availability, housing affordability, all of these issues that we're seeing in the housing space around the country, and sort of some insights that they have collected this year as they have been busily engaged doing a lot of survey research on those issues. So that is the program that we have. We are hoping to be wrapped up by 5 p.m. Eastern time. And again, we'll be recording this and we'll be sending out links to everyone. So again, really appreciate your attendance and participation here. There will be opportunities. If you do have a question as you're hearing this in the YouTube comment section, I think that's where you can do the comments or questions. Please feel free to put those there, and we will go ahead and include those in the conversation following the presentations. You can see the little rolling invitation to do the questions and comments there via YouTube. So with that, I'm doing my usual filibustering a little bit in case people are slowly getting on here. But now that we've reached 7 minutes after the hour, I think we can go ahead and get rolling with the program. So without any further ado, I'm going to invite Brandon Fenton from the Kansas Association of Realtors to kick us off and share about their cool Key Contact program. Brandon, the floor is yours.
Hey, Justin, thank you so much. I'm just going to go ahead and pull up my slides here just before we really get started, and I'm going to switch that up like we said. Okay. So now everybody, you should be able to see my full screen slides here. But again, like Justin said, I'm here to kind of give you a little bit of a dive into how we have done our grassroots advocacy here in Kansas, right? How we've integrated specifically the key contact score, and how we've integrated the actual what I call repository for our state political coordinators. That's what we call our key contacts here in Kansas. How we give them information and resources, uploading their handbooks and field guides, taking in their field reports, things like that. So again, we're going to do a brief introduction here and then talk about the key contact score, and then the kind of the two big success areas that we've had with the actual website, the platform for our SPCs, as far as recruitment and deployment success. So again, like I said earlier, my name is Brandon Fenton. I'm with the Kansas Association of Realtors. I do a lot of things here at KAR, but the thing I'm going to be talking with you about today specifically is the State Political Coordinator Program, our grassroots advocacy component of our governmental affairs team. So the key contact score is really, it's kind of a good way to really get started with your recruitment efforts as you try to track down who might be a good fit for these different grassroots volunteer positions. And we have kind of a three-prong recruitment effort here in Kansas. There's member-to-member recruitment. There's staff such as myself or our vice president of governmental affairs, anybody else on staff doing recruitment. And then there's also local association staff and leadership making recommendations and doing recruitment themselves. Essentially, some of these districts are very large, right? And I'm sure a lot of you have those too, where you might have a lot of members and you need to shrink those universes down a little bit and be efficient with your time. Or you might have large swaths of area in some jurisdictions where there are a few members and you might be at a bit of a loss where to start. Either way, this key contact score from the file transfer on the Real Strategies dashboard has helped us bring some efficiency to our recruitment processes, either with those areas with a large amount of members, kind of whittling down who might be a good fit to be in these grassroots positions, Or on the other end, if there's relatively few members in certain areas, it's been really helpful kind of giving me a good springboard, a good place to start with, to start making calls or start getting members to make calls. And it's been really successful so far. I'm a very visual person. So this is what our current house coverage looks like over 2 years. If you see an area that's shaded in green, that is an area where we have coverage by our state political coordinator program. I'm pleased to report that after 2 years, utilizing this key context score, utilizing this platform set up by Real Strategies, that we've been able to achieve not only just specific committee coverage at a certain level, but over 50% coverage of the entire state legislature. And if you look at this screen, I'm way up here in Topeka. If you look all the way to the left-hand side of this picture, Garden and Dodge City are about 5 hours away from us. So there's a very large swaths of space where we have a lot of spread out members. That far northwest district at Colby and Goodland, we have less than 20 members in that entire district. But utilizing this key contact score in the platform, we were able to kind of whittle down some names, people who might be a good fit. We were able to get some of that information into other, local leadership's hands to ask them, hey, would this person be a good fit? Do you think this person would be well suited for the program? And we've been able to use the key contact score again to great success. And this is the Senate side, just to show you the other side. Again, with over half coverage now, we essentially have almost all of Kansas covered as far as the state Senate is concerned. So again, those initial conclusions from our key contact score is that it gives us a good jumping pad to get grassroots volunteer recruitment kickstarted. When I first got here, I didn't have any baseline for recruitment efforts. I didn't have any information whatsoever. So the key contact scores were really helpful. Again, bringing some efficiency to my timelines, trying to, again, shrink some of those larger areas, make that a little bit easier, and focus my efforts in smaller areas where we have less of a membership presence. And this is just to speak to the success of the platform itself and utilizing the information that our members have brought to us who are grassroots volunteers. This was the 2023 legislative session was the first session that our SPCs were really involved in. And all of these successes were something that they were a part of, whether there was a full chamber activation, whether there was a committee activation, tens of millions for different housing programs, expanding our housing incentive districts across our state, tax credits, you name it, they were involved in it. And the same thing in 2024 as well. We got even bigger wins this year as the program grew to, again, about a little over half coverage of the entire state legislature. We were able to get significant property tax relief, cease and desist authority for our real estate commission, and so many other things that were important to our membership, all because of the recruitment efforts and tools put in our hand by Real Strategies, and then being able to implement those and deploy our members to great success. And this is just kind of the last slide to give you some perspective on how it's been received by the legislature and our grassroots volunteers. I'm not going to get into the numbers and metrics. We have a lot of field reports. I have a lot of feedback from members of our state legislature, but nobody on any side of this, whether they were a senator or a representative or one of our SPCs, has said that this is a bad program or that these are bad tools. All the feedback has been positive. There have been no mismatched members. Nobody's been in the wrong place at the wrong time. No incidents. Only good things that we've been hearing. And our grassroots volunteers really do enjoy interacting with our Real Strategies platform and tools. And obviously, Philip here is going to give you the rundown on the upgraded version in a second. But after presenting this to them, that they're even more pleased with the second version. It's a lot more user-friendly, a lot more aesthetically pleasing, and a lot more simple in the way that it intakes field reports. So that is all that I have today to present on our grassroots advocacy. And again, like Justin said, there's a Q&A, so I'm happy to take those at the appropriate time. But Philip, whenever you are ready, sir, you can go ahead and give your part of the presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. Appreciate, obviously everything you've done and working with us on this platform, as well as, recruiting membership to file those field reports and interact with legislators. As Justin mentioned, my name is Philip Craiglow with Real Strategies. I'm the director for our data and tech team. And so these are the types of tools that we work on and, have a lot of interaction with clients to help develop and fit their needs. And as Brandon mentioned, the infancy of their program almost 2 years ago was really about how do we get our members to file field reports after they interact with legislators. How do we get them key information, whether it's talking points, other legislator specific information, even some training opportunities. They developed a field guide. How do we make that available to them in sort of a one stop location throughout a legislative session? And so the first iteration of this tool was really just about find your legislator, establish an account, file a field report. And as we started to talk with Brandon and think of what does a new iteration of this look like, I think probably the biggest thing in our mind and some of the feedback was, how do you remove the barriers to entry as far as somebody being able to log in, very quickly access the information they need, or the legislator that they're connected with, file a field report and be done. And so this was the initial platform that we came up with. Now, the basis of the system is entirely connected to legislators. And then from there, you can assign your members to legislators. So it's very possible, and Brandon has certainly had examples of this, where members might have filed field reports for several members of the state legislature or state senate. But in our case, we wanted to have some flexibility and functionality, so the client could decide, hey, we only want one member per legislator, or you could have a case like this where you've got a full list of the entire state house or the entire state senate, and they could pick and choose and file field reports for as many folks as they've had interactions with. Pretty basic setup in terms of standard information about each legislator. We've got the ability to add some custom fields here. So in the case of the vote history is something that we can help build into this platform. There's other custom tables and custom data that we've talked about, being able to add things like committee assignments. Maybe there's a need for staff notes that are sort of internal only. But you don't necessarily want to have shared across the other users in the platform, but sort of have on the record as you're going through and making decisions about who's been helpful, who has not been helpful on certain pieces of legislation. From a field report standpoint, the first iteration of this was basically just an open text box like this. And, that also kind of created a situation where if somebody's filing a field report, how much information do I need to share? Is it a sentence, multiple paragraphs? And so we still have that option, of course, but a new setup that we've implemented here is the ability to create, a template, if you will, of a field report that's more of a Q&A drop down, pre-selected answers, those types of things. So it just makes that, ability to file a field report that much faster, but probably even a little bit more informative, where you can sort of drive the member to specific issues, specific questions, and try to, get solid feedback that would be helpful for whatever legislative initiative you're supporting or opposing. So that's kind of the basic legislator card itself. We've got the ability to add in custom content. So from a legislative priority standpoint, you can go ahead and let me refresh this real quick. You can go ahead and add in talking points. You can add resources. Resources would be basically anything from what Brandon had shared with us was a field guide. So we can go ahead and, basically a simple WYSIWYG editor. You can go ahead and add, whatever background information on the resource that you're adding, PDF, Word doc. We can even embed YouTube videos in this section. Lots of ability to provide content for your members. And then lastly, on the workspace, this would be sort of like the default login for a member. And like we talked about before, sort of removing that barrier to entry. You can save legislators that you're assigned to and add them to your workspace. So every time that I would log in, if I was assigned to these two individuals, I would see them. Every time I log into the system, I don't have to go to a list or some search field to find who I'm looking for. All I'd have to do is click on field reports, click new field report, fill this out, hit save or submit, and then I'm done. and I'm able to send that information very quickly. Another kind of looking forward here to think about that we're going to be adding as we get into early 2025 is the ability to add alerts. So if you've got, say, a call for action that's ongoing, you want to make that available to everybody in the system, to have a banner or another pop-up on this page, so something like that could be easily accessible. Specific legislator talking points that could be specific to only a single user. So in the case of, let's say you've got a member who's serving as the key contact for the Speaker of the House, and you have specific information that you only want to share with them and not make available to everyone on the platform, you have the ability to do that in this system. Another piece of functionality that we're going to be working on and implementing is to group users together. So whether that's by, say, a key committee in the State House, or maybe it's something that's member focused. Maybe you want all of your key contacts who are also serving as RPAC trustees to be in a group, and maybe you have specific information for them. Maybe you have key contacts who serve on board of directors or another committee from the association, to be able to group people together for specific purposes. And then lastly, a few of the other associations we've been working with on this have had an application process for their key contacts. And so we've worked with them to implement an application that they can host on their association website. And as that application is completed by their members, all of the data intake is then being reflected in the key contact tool platform. So they can use that as a resource to learn, who within their membership potentially has the ability to serve in this role, and collect that data in one single location. So I think that's primarily the first kind of version of this. We're really looking forward to some other, ideas and feedback that we've received from not only Brandon, but others that we've been working with, and really start to kind of roll this out and put it into the field for several clients in early 2025 as legislative sessions get underway and we have, new members of the state legislature coming into session.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil. Appreciate that. We are going to open things up for Q&A after we're done with these first three presentations. So if you have any questions about this, again, in the YouTube comments there, feel free to put them in there. And you can also reach out to Christine Berger, Julian Ulick, myself, or Phil Craiglow. And then Brandon as well has offered, if people want to email him with some questions, his email is brandon@kansasrealtor.com. And so you can reach out to Brandon if you have any specific questions about their program and how they approached it. So we'll move on now to the next presentation, which is going to be from Robert Proctor. Again, from Wisconsin in the Dane County / Madison area. Robert, remind me how the acronym, I know it's Realtor Association of South Central.
Realtor Association of South Central Wisconsin, a marketing nightmare. But yes, it's a name that they will not change. So again, it's the Realtors Association of South Central Wisconsin. I'm the Government Affairs Director. And Raskow, as a local realtor entity, covers about 21 counties in Wisconsin, including Dane County and the city of Madison, which is the home of the University of Wisconsin. It's the capital, the fastest growing county in the state, and the most liberal county in the state. And that's basically where we're located. And so what we've done locally is the Raskow, the Realtors Association of South Central Wisconsin, created a 527 Raskow Housing Advocacy Fund. And that's what I'll tell you about today. So next slide, please. All right, so this slide is basically telling you who we are. Raskow Housing Advocacy Fund is a 527 that was created by Raskow. It's a separate tax entity. that is able to advocate in campaigns. It's an entity that is able to say, vote for candidate Y or vote for candidate X. And it is generally funded using our PAC, using grants from the NAR and grants from the State Association's Housing Alliance. And we do a couple things: issue advocacy and candidate support. And it's the issue advocacy was used to be done by RASCO, our Realtor Association, as opposed to the Advocacy Fund. But we decided to move it over because of some of the issues we have, and to brand the Advocacy Fund. If you could do the next slide, please. So one of the issues we've run into, for those of you on the call that have read the recent New York Times article on the National Association of Realtors, the RASCO Housing Advocacy Fund would be the local equivalent of the American Property Owners Alliance that was in that article. For those of you who haven't read the article, don't read it. You can just ignore it and move on. But it's basically the similar type entity. And we run, Dane County is approximately 90% will vote Democrat. Well, maybe 85% Democrat, and they'll have historically a 90% turnout. And one of the problems we've always had is, obviously, we're seen as a Republican-leaning business association. So often when we interview candidates, in the past, we would ask the candidate, do you want us to endorse you? And they would say, well, I'm happy if you endorse me, but I won't use it, and we don't want you to announce it. It will hurt me if the Realtors Association endorses me. And anytime that we would back a project or back a policy issue, we would have to do it quietly because we would be accused of doing more harm than good. One staffer at the city of Madison said, anytime you want to kill something, you should come out in support of it. And so that was the type of issues that we were dealing with. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Can you hear me? Can you advance the slide, please? Okay, well, something's going on with the slideshow. So anyway, one of the things we tried to do then was to build our credibility with the elected officials and with the electorate at large. And the way we did that is we started to partner with a number of groups, and we did it by actually doing large donations to get into some of the local groups, such as that partner in order to, here we go. Okay. So, well, we're back. So anyway, when I was talking about us having a credibility problem, this was the picture that accompanied one of the editorials against us, or that was critical of what we would do. And as you can see, it was RASCO pouring money into the ballot box. So next slide, please. That's where we started trying to address our credibility gap. And in dealing with the credibility gap is the first thing we did was to really reach out to a lot of the other stakeholders in the housing world. Obviously, the housing crisis gave us an opening, and we started to brand the RASCO Housing Advocacy Fund. And basically, our tagline is always, we support candidates and policies that support housing. And we used our PAC, and we used a lot of other mechanisms to donate money to different organizations in order to create our own brand on housing. When we joined one of them, one of the organizations, one of the elected officials actually objected to us being in it, tried to get us kicked out. But we were able to start doing these things. So next slide, please. So one of the examples is working through an NAR grant. We did Madison Housing Week last summer, and that was 7 days that it was us, the AARP. These aren't all the coalition partners. There's about 10 of us. We paid for the whole thing through a grant, the Realtors Association, but it was taking tours of missing middle housing in Madison, doing seminars on reducing zoning barriers to building missing middle, taking tours of affordable housing, taking tours of accessory dwelling units. And we worked very closely with a lot of these groups in order to build trust with them. Next slide, please. The next one we've been working on for a long time is we've been working with a group called the Dane County Housing Initiative. And that includes Dane County, the city of Madison, many municipalities. And we've been spending about a year putting together a housing report that came out of strategy and all over. And basically the idea is the cities and villages came together with the local stakeholders to figure out what they can do on housing and take all of those ideas back with a scorecard and then implement them. We were one of the largest donors, and now that the strategy is done and we're trying to introduce it, we're running a $125,000 campaign to get some of the strategies, especially in the city of Madison, approved. And we're starting by, you can see here, we're wrapping the buses with the information, and you can't see it very well, but at the bottom, you'll see it's paid for by the Raskow Housing Advocacy Fund. So then you get to the next slide, and you'll see that we just did a Dane County a Dane County election for a county executive. And we supported Melissa Agard. We did an issue advocacy campaign for her, spent somewhere just under $70,000, which is about half as much as the candidate spent. So we were easily the biggest third-party player within the campaign. To kind of give you the idea, when we play in the campaigns locally, if the city of Madison alders are up, there's 20 of them. We may spend $150,000, and all of them together may spend $100,000. So we've been spending a lot of money, and usually, as I said before, nobody would want our endorsement. They wouldn't meet with us. Well, Melissa Agard got elected, and you can see the picture on the right is members of our Government Affairs Committee. We were invited to her inauguration as county executive. We took pictures with her up front. Most of the local officials will now take our endorsements, put them on their materials. They will, we are one of the largest people that donate to all the elections, but through our issue advocacy, we were able to build this brand up in order so that everybody locally would truly see us as housing. And we don't do anything negative. And we also, though, make sure that everything we do is based on housing. We don't, we protect our brand as the Raskow Housing Advocacy Fund very closely so that we don't end up with like the negative press. And I think a real good example of that is there was recently a referendum for the school district that's going to raise real estate taxes about $1,300 to $1,400 a year on the medium priced house. And we were going to run a huge advocacy campaign against it, and we had the NAR run us. Joe Good ran us a poll, and the poll showed that it was going to easily pass. And not just that it was going to pass, that if any candidate opposed it, that they would be viewed very negatively. So we decided to pull out of that campaign and keep our powder dry. And it did pass 70% to 30%, but being able to use the polling through Joe Good and we were able to protect our brand and not waste money on that type of campaign. But those are the kind of things that we've been working on to really try to create a brand. And we've been doing, it's taken about 6-7 years for us to get there. So it didn't happen overnight, but really concentrating on doing issue mobilization, very positive pro-housing issue mobilization, has allowed us to keep credibility, to create credibility when we support candidates, and reduce the criticism of when we invest money into these campaigns. And that's it. So the last slide is just says questions. So.
Robert, awesome. Thank you very much.
Do you want me to introduce Nathan?
Well, I think that would be very appropriate. You worked very closely with him. Let's bring Nathan in here next.
All right. Well, Nathan is the state contact at the Wisconsin Realtors Association for Raskow, and he helps us and guides us on every single campaign we do. He's easily the best state contact in the country, and he has been super helpful on all of our strategy on the local level. And his help, in all serious and very seriously, his help has been instrumental, because we really do. This isn't what we do. Nobody on the local level has a campaign background or a marketing background. So the help we get from Real Strategies, from the polling, and from the state contact, Nathan, is super helpful, because otherwise we would just step in it over and over again, most likely. So without further ado, Mr. Nathan Conrad.
Love it.
Wow. I don't know how to really follow myself up with that one. Thank you, Robert. Actually, to be honest, Robert is the perfect example of a government affairs director who doesn't give himself enough credit. Raskow has done a fantastic job of making housing the #1 issue in local elections. 2022 and 2023, on those local elections, the ability to utilize their independent expenditure programs with the help of Real Strategies brought to the forefront a lot of down ballot elections that would not have gotten the attention that they did, thanks to the efforts that Robert put forward, and then put a pro-housing agenda on that city council's plate, and then push that forward. It was a tremendous effort that he's been doing and continues to do. So thank you, Robert, for the kind words, and thank you for all the hard work that you do. My name is Nathan Conrad. I'm the Director of Grassroots Political Advocacy and Engagement here at the Wisconsin Realtors Association. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about our Realtor and Government Day program and the digital outreach that we were so graciously working with Real Strategies with during the 2023 program. I got to make sure I'm actually selecting this correctly. So, and unfortunately, my stuff doesn't seem to have lined up correctly. That's my fault, I'm sure. So this is an annual event we do every year. It's either in late winter or early spring. That depends on whether or not we are in a budget year or a non-budget year. So coming into 2025, we are in a budget year. So our Realtor and Government Day will be in mid-April of this year. This is an opportunity for realtors to discuss our legislative priorities directly with their legislators. In 2023, we had near record attendance with more than 500 realtors from throughout the state come into Madison. We have an event. We brief them all directly on the legislative priorities. We have briefing packets for them to be able to walk up the street into the Capitol, and then we disperse into groups where their legislators meet, and then they give out their information and try to talk to them directly as constituents and as realtors on these priority issues, and why it's important to vote for or against legislation that is helpful to the real estate industry. Our event is the largest in-person lobbying day event for any trade association in Wisconsin. There are a few others that do virtual events still that will garner somewhere around the numbers that we do for our in-person event, but no one comes close to us in comparison to the sheer volume of individuals that show up for this event. How do we grow this? This is something we are always trying to do. Our association statewide is a little over 18,000 members. 500 people may sound like a lot, but that's less than 5% of our total amount of members. We're always trying to look to get people to come in. In the past, we've always utilized our traditional outreach techniques, which is about 120 days or 4 months before the event. We start sending emails. We'll do normal tactics that we would do here at the association, like putting an ad in our magazine, doing a social media hit here or there, and we would see registration spikes around targeted emails or other normal events that we would do, but not a good steady beat of registration or engagement and action when we would want to see a kind of a larger influx of individuals coming into this event. So we were looking for a needed spark to gain momentum and increase attendance for our 2024 event this past February. So we started working on next steps. Utilizing our traditional outreach methods in that first 120 days, we garnered just about almost 500 registrations in our first 101 days of our marketing campaign to reach out to our membership. We had spoken with Justin and the rest of the Real Strategies crew, and we're like, every other program that we've utilized their ability to market not only to our members, but to target individuals outside of the realtor universe has been spot on with how they target individuals. We came to them and we're like, how can we get a better opportunity and better access to our members and make them notice and visualize and come to us when we want to get information in front of them and have them actually participate, engage, and pay attention. So Real Strategies created a program with the existing creative materials that we had and helped facilitate on kind of getting those beefed up on steroids, as I say, with our videos and our static creative opportunities to target WRA members. They started this program on the 22nd of January. And within the first 3 days, we had 46 new signups. It doesn't sound like a huge amount, but if you look at the fact that we'd only had 490 for 101 days before that, that's a 10% increase over 3 days. In the 10 days that program had run, we had 159 new signups. So we were seeing a dramatic increase in the amount of individuals signing up, individuals paying attention, and individuals engaging in what we needed them to do, which was to register for this event and to come pay attention and be a part of our program. There were two at the end of the entire program, which was a initial 10-day run and then an additional 8-day run after that did a retargeting program. We had 255 total registrants over those 16 days. So half again as many individuals who had signed up originally were participating. This gave us the largest attended Realtor and Government Day in WRA history. We had more than 600 attendees in attendance, which was over a 25% increase from the year before, excuse me. We had over 745 registrants for the event, which was an enormous. We had to double the size of the room that we originally booked, so we were really excited about that. It's always a great opportunity when you're worried about having too much or not enough space for the amount of people that you want to have, and this is something we were excited about because we knew we were going to have an entire crew of engaged realtors who are going to come talk passionately about issues that are important to our industry directly with their legislators, who were going to have a huge impact on whether or not legislation was going to pass. What we realized at the offset was that our existing assets can work well, but distribution was what we needed and have it work better. One of the key indicators that I saw as a huge benefit of success was that the video that was put together internally, we never knew how well it was really doing. When Real Strategies took over and was able to distribute this well, they were getting more than a 93% completion rate on the video, meaning that our members were sitting in front of this advertisement for all intents and purposes, getting them excited about Realtor and Government Day, and they were watching the entire duration of the video and then clicking on a link and then participating in the event for a sign up. I mean, I don't think you can ask for success in a digital program any better than that. And this was a true benefit, not only for us, but hopefully it's a feather in the cap for Real Strategies to be able to showcase this to other statewide and local associations to find ways to target your membership to participate in events that you need buy-in and you need your memberships to be there with. Another takeaway that we saw was that a hybrid of our traditional outreach and this new medium of outreach really paved the way for success for this endeavor, and will probably be utilized in other avenues for us to do outreach with our members and get engaged in our topics as the years go by. So again, thank you. I'm going to make my portion of this very short for you all today. My name is Nathan Conrad. If you have any questions on this, please do not hesitate to reach out. Again, my email is nathan@wra.org, and I will hand this back to Justin and the team.
Thank you, Nathan. Appreciate that very much. We were so excited to be able to help you with that, and we were very excited about the response, not just the completion rate, but one thing that obviously is a big deal with these digital programs. And for those of you that don't know, Nathan has many years of experience doing campaign work on the IE side, and even before his life with WRA. And a big part of the success of these digital programs is just being able to get a good match rate on your data going in to be able to target. And we were really pleased with the match rate percentage that we were able to get.
You guys are second to none when it comes to these. So let's push for 900 this year, and we'll talk about this after this call.
Sounds good. Well, awesome. Well, want to open it up now. If anyone has any questions, if you have something in the YouTube questions, we can do those. If not, that's okay too, and we can move on. But I'll give just a moment to see if my colleague Anthony, who is running the back end of this, is if we have any questions there. And also just want to congratulate Robert and Anthony. Anthony had a little technical difficulty there and did a great job getting us back up to speed super fast there. So Robert and Anthony, thank you for getting us back going again, and Robert especially for handling that with grace as you usually do with things. So we don't have any questions in here, and that's okay. So we will go ahead and move on now to our next presentation, which is going to be a couple of members of our team. Coleman Bass first is going to kick things off. Then I think our colleague Christine Berger may join later on as well. But as I mentioned earlier, Coleman came to our team with a long background in the advertising world, and so he's got a lot of expertise in digital advertising, and so we're excited to hear from him. And he's going to share about what we think of as being a revolutionary new tool for digital advertising. And so, Coleman, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Justin. All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for that great introduction. Appreciate it. Excited to run through the digital ad platform overview here. Our newest technology that I think is going to be really helpful, has been really helpful for a lot of our associations. So, oops, there we go. There we go. So just a little bit of background here on what programmatic digital advertising is and what we're talking about. We're talking about display ads, which is what you see when you typically go to somewhere on the web, apps, games. You might see a little basically banner at the top of your page that has some information. They're on the open web. The other one that you might be familiar with is pre-roll, online video. You see ads pop up in short video plays. Same sort of technology here that we're referring to, the ability to place those. The next thing that we have here is connected television. Folks know that from Hulu and Amazon Prime and Netflix. Those are those types of providers. And we can also advertise on those platforms as well. I'm sure folks have seen those ads pop up, and we can target individuals and households through that mechanism. The other piece is native ads, which you have likely seen as well at the bottom of articles. Sometimes it says sponsored content. It's usually got things about shopping or new ways to do it yourself or celebrity things like that. But it's another way that people can engage with a particular topic. That's the main things that we're focusing on here today. We're not talking about social, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We do a lot of work in that space, but this specific platform is about the open web and some of these elements that I just mentioned. Moving right along, just to provide a perspective on the advertiser and agency landscape. Typically, we have an advertiser, in this case, Sam's Ice Cream, let's say, and they might hire an agency to do their digital outreach and advertising. In that case, the total dollars available for outreach is going to go down because it's going through multiple different players. The demand side platform, the DSP that runs those ads, is separate from the ABC digital agency. The advertiser in the next example is hiring an agency, but then that agency hires another agency who then uses a platform. We see that as well, a specialized media buying agency. But again, more fees are going to each of those agencies along the way. So the total dollars available for the outreach is significantly reduced in each of these models. In our example, we're basically integrating right with the digital ad platform because we've built it. And that allows us to reduce a lot of the fees and costs and save a lot of money for our clients because we're going directly into the platform and can control those costs more carefully. So let me dive a little bit more into those costs, which is pretty eye-opening. And some of this might not be surprising, but it certainly is eye-opening. So the Association of National Advertisers did a study earlier this year, and they found that 36 cents of every dollar that enters a DSP, which is the digital advertising platform, reaches the consumer. So that's a pretty big percentage that's taken off. That's 64%. So 64% of the campaign budgets aren't going to the actual media buying. They're going to things like the data vendors, the tech companies, the agencies. Sometimes the way that it's being reported out, if you want certain special features like API calls, those are all percentages that increase the fees and allow less money to flow to the act buy. So there's markups kind of along the way. We also are constantly scanning for spammy websites and things like that just kind of are clickbait and basically waste the client's money, but are very profitable for typically the agency. So something else that we're including within the tool is brand safety and fraud. In our example, what we're offering for those using the platform themselves through a self-service option, 17% is going to be the media fee, and that's it. So in this example here, we see 64%, and ours, we're looking more at 17%, and that's just to cover the fees of the platform with no minimums. Typically, they charge big minimums. Folks have heard of likely things like Trade Desk and Adform and StackAdapt. Those are some other big names. Typically, there are minimums each month that have to be spent just to use the platform. We also offer a managed service, and that's 22%. So that's just 5% more than 17 for a full managed service. We'll run the ads for you, and that's at 22%. So again, that's 22% compared to the 64%. Just to dive a little bit further into the numbers, let's say an association has a budget of 10K. In a normal media buying situation, based on the report and based on our own research, we're going to see 36 cents on the dollar actually making its way to buying media, which yields about 200 to 300,000 impressions. And that's 3.6K of that 10K that you originally started with. Now, that's quite a big difference from the DAP, which is what we're offering today, where you'll get $8.3 thousand off of that 10,000. So that's 83 cents on the dollar. That's 500 to 650,000 impressions. So that's quite a bit more. You're looking at more than double the impressions in that scenario. Now, if you were to use our team, it would be 78 cents on the dollar, but that's still quite a far cry from the 36 cents. And this is all kind of capable of being shown through, we offer, digital receipts that actually tell you what media was bought where. We call those ad logs. And that's something that's not typically offered by other DSP platforms or any advertising for that matter. That's something that's definitely kept under wraps. So with this, of course, you can increase your campaign reach. You can increase the ad frequency. You're more than doubling the budget and the impressions through a platform like DAP. Moving right along, a lot of people ask about what type of publishers we're able to get on through connected TV or through websites. These are just some of the few. This is a tiny, tiny fraction of what's actually offered. But as you can see, it's the big names. We can get anywhere, anytime. We can do custom packages. Pretty much the world is your oyster when it comes to digital advertising on this platform. And it sticks to those original fees that we had mentioned, 17% and 22% of the total media spend. Another technology that's built with this platform is the website visitor identification, identity resolution engine, which is called Wire. And that's basically a code that goes on a website. It allows retargeting. It allows to see who actually visited your site down to the household level. It allows you to capture data on those website visitors. It's a super powerful piece of technology, and that comes alongside of our platform. And it allows for an analysis and review of actual people that are landing on your website to be able to retarget them. Our reporting, of course, is an important part of the process. And we have a dashboard where you can see key performance indicators. It's easy to use. You can schedule automations. You can customize the setup to get whatever you need when you need it. We've sent data to folks' Tableau dashboards, Google Studio dashboards, Looker dashboards, wherever the data needs to go, or for no additional cost, we can have that link up and provide the data that you need to the key stakeholders. So really simple way that we do reporting. It's all integrated into our system. And then just kind of to summarize some of the things I mentioned, but also point out a few more features of this particular platform. We talked about cost. That's a big piece that drives a lot of the business. But in addition to that, we're offering much better speed. The data assets are preloaded and pre-matched within our platform. So you don't have to use tools like LiveRamp or HighTouch, which can take up to 7 days to get the data into the platform that you need. And you might need that quickly. So that's a big problem for political campaigns in particular, if you're trying to advertise to a specific audience. So this is near instantaneous versus we've seen as much as 7 days to get the audience onboarded through other partners. Plus you have to pay for that onboarding, which we've removed through our system. Transparency, we talked about the ad logs, which allow you to know who saw what ads, which is pretty impressive technology. You can calculate the true campaign reach through that. So you can actually see, again, where the money is being spent. The match rates I mentioned, we sit on a large trove of data, so we're able to match back at a much higher rate than a lot of different platforms are to find individuals online if we use a customized list. Privacy is another big piece. Since we're not onboarding data from different providers, we don't have to send it to a LiveRamp or a HighTouch. We can all do it within a secure environment within one platform. So it keeps everything housed within one tool. The scalability of it supports tens of millions of dollars per day. There's no worry about how big your campaign can be. This was tested during the election. We saw quite a bit of impressions, millions of impressions going through the platform each day, and it handled it flawlessly. So that's been battle tested just in the last few months. And consistency. The data is all housed in the platform. So the reporting is very informative and high level. And again, you can customize it to your individual needs. So a couple key features here. And with that, I would like to bring in my colleague, Christine, to talk a little bit about a unique opportunity with the DApp that can provide a potential non-dues revenue generator. So it's very exciting. And I'm going to turn it over to Christine right now to run through this slide.
Thank you, Coleman. Hi, everybody. My name is Christine Berger. I'm a senior strategic consultant with Real Strategies. And thanks to Coleman, who was talking about how your association can use our digital advertising platform, or DApp, how you can use DApp to market to your members, how you can use it for your campaigns, member engagement, etc. But now we'd like to talk to you about how this can be an invaluable resource for your broker community. As you all know, brokers are constantly running ad campaigns to promote their brand, to promote their listings. It's an important piece of their business. And so now through this digital advertising platform, associations can offer this efficient and cost-effective tool to their broker community so they can run ad campaigns, and it becomes basically a value add that you're giving your brokers, a new service. So the association here acts like an agency, and of course, agencies can charge for their services. And that is why this is a new opportunity for non-dues revenue. So we'll just talk about how you would be, someone in the communications department or whoever's interested can be trained on the DAP. It's simple. I can do it. You can do it. Your communications team can do it. Basically, they become trained and familiar with it. So they'd be acting like an agency. So normally, of course, a brokerage goes out and they hire the agency, as Coleman mentioned. They have to hire a data firm. They have to hire, somebody to match and onboard the data, which costs fees, and they have to get it into a digital advertising platform and buy the ads. So there's a lot of additional fees that go into advertising. Well, with us, it's all done through the association. So the brokers purchase and conduct their digital advertising through the association. Of course, this means the broker's ad is uploaded into the system. The data is matched. It's all very fast and effective. And then their campaign is launched. It's very simple. Then you, in turn, the association in turn charges a platform fee to the brokers for your services. And that brokerage fee is, that fee is the association's non-dues revenue. So, for example, Coleman was talking about how we can charge Real Strategies charges 17% for the self-service fees. So the association would add some type of margin or fee on top of that 17% that they would then keep for their non-dues revenue. So he was saying before the markups were like 64%. If we did the 17 for Real Strategies plus the, pick a percentage, whether it's 5%, 10%, whatever you pick, that's going to be 27% total with 17 and 10. It's still a lot cheaper than a markup of 64%. So it's still going to be a wonderfully cost-effective service and a value add that you can give to your brokers and make money on the side. So if you are interested in a demonstration of our platform where you can see how it all works, feel free to reach out to either Justin, Julian, or myself. We'd be happy to schedule a demo for you. It is a wonderful service. We're very excited about it.
Awesome. Thanks, Christine and Coleman. Appreciate that. I don't know if we have any questions as of now. But as Christine said, feel free to reach out and we'd be happy to do a full demo showing off the platform itself and answer any questions then, of course. So awesome. Well, our next and final presentation for the user group meeting this month is our friends, of course, at American Strategies, Joe Good and Sarah Stevenson. Really appreciate their time. I know they're working on a bunch of year-end surveys leading into legislative sessions next year and all sorts of other interesting projects. So thank you both for making time for this today. And they're going to be sharing their insights on what they've learned this year on housing issues through all their survey research around the country. That's hopefully relevant to you all watching. So with that, Joe and Sarah, thank you.
Great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's Joe Good at American Strategies. Can you hear me okay, Anthony? I assume yes. I have my full screen up. As Justin said, we kind of wanted to just go over a couple of things with you in terms of some of the things we've been seeing with our research in 2024 and how some of the other RPP clients have used research, polling, and focus groups to kind of get at some of the major issues that you've been facing. And really, as we're looking into 2025, I think a lot of this comes down to almost no matter what issue you're working on, it kind of comes back to housing costs and housing inventory. And so we want to talk a little bit about that and just some of the trends that we're seeing, and then go a little more detail with some focus groups that we did that the Wisconsin Realtors sponsored. This is all Wisconsin Day, on the idea of perhaps creating Yes in My Backyard advocacy groups. So YIMBY groups to kind of counter NIMBY groups. I think it kind of ties everything together that we're seeing. So we wanted to kind of share some of those results with you and maybe get some ideas going in your own head about how to utilize some of this research to address the housing inventory issues in your community. So I think when you think about what we've seen in 2024, and that's kind of the rise of housing costs as a national issue. And I know that might sound a little bit, duh, I knew that. But I think if those of you like ourselves who have been working on this issue for 10, 15 years, it wasn't really a national issue. Now, coming out of the pandemic, we had interest rates, we saw housing costs really go up. I think you saw that kind of bubbling up from not just being a West Coast and East Coast issue to all sorts of big cities and towns, college towns experiencing problems with housing costs, to where now it doesn't really matter where you poll. Everybody thinks that housing affordability is just a huge issue across the country. And the real evidence of that is you see White House proposals on what to do about housing costs. You saw it in the presidential debates, come up as an issue that both candidates felt they had to address during the presidential campaign. So we've really kind of seen this rise of housing as an issue that's getting a lot more play. And, that's especially true, I think, in the opinion former, what I call the opinion elites, the press. You're really seeing kind of the drilling down, right? Well, of course, housing is expensive, but why is housing expensive? And I feel like I can't pick up the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times or Vox going online, and I'm seeing some story about someone writing about why inventory is such a big problem. Jerusalem Demsas has written so many articles for the Atlantic that you can get a handy little book now about all the issues having to do with housing affordability, why we're in this inventory crunch. So I think the elites get it, and we're seeing that at the state level, and a lot of the issues probably that you're dealing with, where state legislatures are getting this feedback from the public. They're coming up with ideas like zoning reforms at state level, ADUs, making ADUs like a state right. We're seeing that in some states. Of course, on the other side, we're seeing rent control coming up, statewide, state governments considering some type of minimum rent control legislation that I know a lot of you are fighting. So it's all this evidence that housing is really a hot issue right now. But the problem I think that we're facing in the realtor community and the advocacy community is, as far as the public considers this, it's still an affordability issue. They're not really getting this supply-demand problem. I'm going to go a little bit more into that in a second. But in all of our polling, we're just not seeing the public really understanding inventory as an issue. To your general public, this is really just about costs. Why is housing so expensive that I can't buy a home? Why can't my kids buy a home? Why can't I find that, why can't I downsize into an affordable home? So the public still sees this primarily as an affordability issue. And then even though we get all this attention, you all know that when push comes to shove at that local level, at the county level, at the municipal level, we still have this huge NIMBY problem where, the advocacy and the advocates still are in that not in my backyard. Sure, I know housing is a problem, but we don't want this housing issue here for environmental reasons, for traffic reasons. We're going to go into some of the things that we see. So I think that those are the big trends that we've seen in 2024, and I think are really going to apply to a lot of what you're going to have to do in 2025. So let me quantify a little bit of that. We do a poll every year for the Maryland Realtors. Thank you, Lisa May and their team, through their RPP contract. We've been charting housing costs. And you can see kind of here this trend. I mean, even in 2020 in Maryland, 57% felt that the cost to buy a home was too high. The cost to rent was like 60%. But you can see how that went up to 71% saying housing costs were too high in 2022 and up to 76% in 2023. And, we're going to be in the field again here in a couple of weeks, and I'm sure that number is going to be up in the 80% now. So it's not a Democratic issue. It's not a Republican issue. It's not a college issue. It's not a non-college issue. It's not a young person's issue. It's not an old person's issue. Everybody understands that housing costs, the cost to buy a home, and rental costs are just much too high. And in the Maryland data, and we asked this battery of questions in a lot of our polls, where we ask people who are in the market, what's the biggest obstacle that you see to buying a home? And it really all gets back to this number one here, having a full-time job, but still not making enough to afford a home. That's kind of the crucial thing that we hear in our focus groups, that we see in other research that we do. Hey, I'm doing everything right. I have a job. My wife has a job. We're doing everything. We're saving money, but we still can't get that down payment. And you still see lots of obstacles underneath that. Interest rates, making the cost of loans too expensive, too much debt from college and student loans, having enough money for a down payment, high construction costs, too much credit card debt. But you can see it all gets back to people saying, yes, I went to college, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't be able to afford a home, right? So it all gets back to this issue of wages and what folks are making versus what they're seeing when they try to go buy a home on the open market right now. Now, another way that we get at this, and I think a way to think about it and the big barriers that you need to think about that you need to kind of overcome as you're thinking about housing inventory battles in 2025 is kind of what Sarah and I call the affordability availability gap. So I've probably done polls for a lot of you. We do lots of surveys for NAR and other, the renters, the National Apartment Association as well. And we ask a question about how much of a problem is availability of housing in your community. That is the number of houses, condominiums, or apartments that are available to buy or rent. And we have that a very big problem, a fairly big problem, a moderate problem, whole scale. And we also ask how much of a problem is affordability in your community. That is to say, how much it costs to buy or rent a home. I could show you a ton of data on this, but I really just kind of want to show you the averages because this is the battle that we face, I think, in the public. Everybody over here on the left-hand side sees affordability as either a very big problem, that's my really red bar here, or a very big problem. 65% understand that housing affordability in their community, in their county, in their state, whatever jurisdiction I was polling in, it kind of averages out to 65% seeing that as a very big problem. But when I ask that availability question, look what's happens. We only have 43% who say that availability is either a very big problem or a fairly big problem. So there's kind of this 20-point gap overall in our numbers. And we see that go down to 20 points, 25 points, as high as 33 points in some places, where we see this disconnect, that kind of basic supply and demand that we learned back in economics that, well, if there's a shortage of something, then there must be costs going up. But people don't see that housing shortage. All they see are the availability or the affordability problem. Whereas availability, it's a problem, they kind of get it, but it's not on their radar like the way affordability is. So we do a couple of questions that we kind of try and get a little more in detail on that. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah for a couple of minutes to kind of talk through some of the types of questions that we ask that can help you in terms of educating elected officials or the press or governmental officials in your community and kind of show you how we can get at these distinctions of what people are seeing. So Sarah, you want to talk through this one?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So another place where we see this gap between folks thinking about the cost of housing being a problem, but not necessarily tying that to housing inventory being a problem, is in a series of questions where we ask, is there too little, too much, or about the right amount of this type of housing in your community? When we ask about types of housing in your community, we've got folks who say, yeah, there's too little. They recognize that there's a shortage of some kinds of housing in their community. For example, on this slide, you see at the top of the list, for this community, the type of housing they felt there was not enough of was primarily detached single-family homes with large yards. And then at the bottom of the list, you see apartment buildings, townhouses, detached single-family homes with small yards. And you can see that in some of these cases, the red and the green are almost the same length, just kind of suggesting that's where you get a little bit more of the push and pull between is there too much or is there too little of this specific type of housing. But where we really see that gap between how folks are thinking about affordability versus inventory, Joe, if you could go to the next slide, is if we frame it in terms of the types of people who need housing. Here you can see that the red bars are much bigger because there's more of a recognition that there is too little housing in the community for certain groups of people. So at the top of the list, for example, you have housing for people with low incomes, housing for younger people and those just starting their careers, housing for older people who are looking to downsize, those with moderate incomes, smaller housing options for single and two-person households. These are just some of the types of examples. We ask this question, these two questions, again, all over the country in all types of communities. And what we've learned is that time after time, if you focus on the people who need housing, again, consistent with that cost of housing being the primary problem, folks are much more likely to recognize the issue than if you focus on the inventory side and the type of housing. And for example, a shortage of missing middle housing or a shortage of multifamily housing options or single floor living options, et cetera. So Joe, if you could go to the next slide. We also have a number of concerns that folks have around growth and development when it comes to building more in different types of housing. We ask these kinds of questions to just kind of sort out, cost of housing, yes, a very big problem. But what are some of the things that are holding people back from supporting building more in different types of housing in their communities? And the kinds of themes that we regularly see come up are, again, this disconnect between does supply impact costs. And a lot of folks are fearful that even if there's more and different types of housing built in their communities, that developers or the builders are just going to keep charging high prices for less land and smaller units. So a lot of voters don't necessarily equate building more housing or building different types of housing with bringing down housing costs, which they see as the primary problem. Then also we see often that folks are concerned about the environmental impact of additional housing development. This is expressed in different ways in different types of communities. So in some places that might mean being afraid that additional housing is going to break up the rural character of a community, or that it's going to turn into sprawl that takes up farms and fields and wetlands, or that's going to put an additional strain on natural resources like the water supply out west is something that folks often point to as a concern. Another common theme is that building more in different types of housing will increase traffic congestion. We see this almost everywhere. It doesn't matter how big or small your community is. If you build more in different types of housing, people think that that's going to increase traffic and increase traffic congestion. And then you do have folks who are concerned that allowing different types of housing or building more housing will change the character of the city. So Joe, on the next slide, we've got this other question format that we use sometimes to kind of force a choice between some of these cross pressures that people feel. On the one hand, housing costs are super high, but on the other hand, folks might want to preserve the character of their community or be concerned about water supply or be concerned about traffic congestion. And so we oftentimes ask a kind of paired question that we can frame in different ways for different communities, but this really gets at the heart of the matter, in terms of how people feel about increasing inventory to bring down costs versus some of the concerns that they have around growth and development.
Well, what I thought might make sense to do, and with Wisconsin's permission, we wanted to share the results of some focus groups that we did for them earlier this year, where we all know how activists and loud the NIMBY people can be. The Wisconsin folks were wondering, well, what would it take to create a YIMBY group, perhaps using data, using statistics to get people motivated to contact their elected officials or government, local government on, yes, we need more housing. So we put together a set of focus groups in Wisconsin. We did the folks we thought would be looking for housing. They were Milwaukee area residents concerned about housing affordability and availability. We talked to some NIMBY voters in the Janesville area, people who kind of wanted to limit the construction of new housing in Janesville because that's where there's been a lot of construction going on. And then we also talked to some other potential YIMBY voters who we thought might be YIMBY voters, folks who live in Dane County in the Madison area where housing costs have really exploded and they're looking to buy or sell or downsize And we did these 3 focus groups and wanted to kind of get that qualitative, wanted to hear how folks talked about it. So when we went into the room, we started asking about, hey, how do you feel about housing costs? It was a very animated discussion. Everybody had a story to tell, either a personal story to tell about themselves, the difficulty they were having finding housing or getting into that first house, or their kids wanting to live in the area, living close to family, couldn't afford a home. It was a very personal issue, really replicating what we see with the quantitative numbers in our polls. This qualitative information really kind of filled out just how personal the housing issue is to people. When we asked them, hey, what's the problem here? Why is housing so expensive? We were hoping we might hear, well, all these people are stopping, housing from being constructed, or at least we thought that might be part of the conversation. It really wasn't. What people talked about were inflation, interest rates, supply chain, cost of labor, all sorts of things came up, and they kind of understood that there's a multivariate, multifaceted reasons for why housing's so expensive. But they really didn't talk about NIMBY at all in this section where, they're, and then people make it tough to build. But they did have a pretty good awareness of why everything else was being so expensive. So when I pushed them on this idea that hey, we can't build, it's hard to build because of NIMBY people, or, maybe you're not seeing enough housing construction. Well, they really just stayed focused on cost because they saw lots of construction going on around them. But they would talk, to Sarah's point, about, there's $600,000 2-bedroom condominiums here. There's $850,000 row houses. They're not the kind of housing that I can afford or that my family can afford. It's expensive housing that's being built. It's smaller housing than what I want. And, I couldn't afford it anyway, even if I wanted to. So there's really some of that pushback here that they didn't see availability as the issue. They saw affordability as the issue. And when we really tried to push them on the NIMBY thing, they kind of said, I understand that. I know that happens, but I don't think that's the reason why we don't see more housing being built or why affordable housing isn't being built. So our next step was to try and really push this idea of, well, would you contact your official? We threw some statistics at them about how much housing is needed in Wisconsin, how much shortage there is between demand and supply. And, it all made sense to them. And this idea of yes in my backyard activism was appealing, especially people who were in the market. But it was kind of a lukewarm reaction, to be honest. It was like, well, it couldn't hurt, right? I mean, I'd be willing to make this phone call. And the more we kind of showed them advocacy materials, they got a little more interested in it. But initially it was kind of does my voice really make a difference? We kind of fell into that cynicism about government. But the more we showed them, the more materials we kind of gave them, the more information we gave them, we did see a lot more motivation, people kind of willing maybe to contact their local officials. And that was especially true of renters who are looking to buy. And that was especially true of parents with children or family members, people in the market. So if you're kind of looking for who's your low-hanging fruit for YIMBY activism, it's going to be people who you would expect it to be. It's people who are in the market. It might be parents whose kids are trying to buy, or it might be their kids who are trying to buy. In Wisconsin, especially in Dane County, there was a very partisan dimension to it as well, where you had a lot of these kind of Democrats under 50 who not only wanted more housing for themselves, but they also kind of felt housing was a right and it just needed to be more housing available to kind of address homelessness and unequal housing. But I think for most folks, it's those first 2 groups that are going to be the most likely advocates for you in terms of doing that YIMBY messaging. As Sarah said earlier, in almost any outreach campaign that I do, the most effective messages are going to be the ones that hit home in that kind of personal way, either to them personally or a scenario that they can say, yeah, I understand that because it is affecting me. So the 2 messages that we had best were, too many working Wisconsin families are being shut out of home ownership because there are not enough affordable homes available. These are often 2-income households, but there are not enough starter homes on the market. I can't tell you how many hands went up and said, that's me, or that's my kid, right? It really kind of hit home, made a lot of sense to people. Another really strong message is kind of a play on workforce housing in a way, but kind of tying it back to the services that people receive. So we talked about the lack of housing in Wisconsin is taking a toll on healthcare, education, and childcare. For example, medical technicians can't afford affordable housing, making it harder for hospital and doctors' offices to provide care. Teachers and daycare workers can't afford housing near where they work, resulting in larger class sizes and limited and expensive daycare operations. So again, we were trying to put a human face on it, but also a face that people could understand how lack of housing affects their ability to get medical care, their ability to get childcare, their ability to have teachers live and work in their community. So those are kind of two examples of the type of messaging that I think works when you think about inventory and some of the challenges that I suspect a lot of you are going to be facing in 2025. So we came out of these focus groups saying, yeah, there's potential for this yes in my backyard activism. It's driven really by housing costs. That's what motivates people. They're not wanting to, fight the NIMBYs. It's really more about what can I do to do something about housing costs. But it's really an education task that has to happen out there for folks. People just aren't making that connection between lack of housing inventory and affordable housing. We don't think that YIMBY activism is going to arise organically. Somebody's going to have to take the lead on that. There's either going to have to be, kind of to Robert's point earlier, make maybe this separate C3 or C4 organization, do it as the realtors, depending on your community. But somebody's going to have to kind of organize and make this YIMBY activism happen. It's unlikely that it would happen organically. But once you get out there with materials, once you kind of do some of that education and kind of make this more into a personal issue, we think that there is potential for running campaigns that would get people motivated to contact their local officials about the need for more housing and try to kind of counter some of that YIMBY activism. So again, we always encourage you to reach out on us. NAR has lots of opportunities for funding research. I think you guys all understand how you can use it. It's great, even if you want to just get a seat at the table, working with local governments. Most local governments can't do this kind of research. They're not willing to spend that kind of money. So there's a whole smart growth program at NAR that we do a lot, where folks are just saying, hey, let's help inform a comprehensive plan. Here's a poll that we can bring to the table that can kind of quantify the way people view the housing shortage, some of those questions that Stevie talked about earlier. Just informing the public debate, doing a poll is a great way to kind of quantify the problem. Great ways you can say, look, X percent say housing affordability is a big problem in our community. Y percent say it's, rental costs are too high. Really putting some of those things out there is a simple way for local media to kind of latch on and get your message out there a little bit better. Or just understanding your operating environment. We haven't shown it here, but obviously we can test certain things, ADUs, rent control, all sorts of things, just to see what people are open to in your community, what type of solutions might work best, which solutions might get pushed back on. Again, understanding what voters are open to is a big part of this, as well as message testing can happen in all your survey research. So I hope that helps a little bit. We'll open it up to questions or discussions, or feel free to send Sarah or I a message. I'm at joegood@amstrat.com. Sarah's at sarahstevenson@amstrat.com. And we will turn it back over to you, Justin or Anthony, and answer any questions.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Sarah. That was excellent, as usual. Would expect nothing less from both of you. Waiting to see if we have any questions that pop up here in the YouTube. No questions so far. So people know where to reach you if they do have some follow-up questions or want to do something similar in their areas. And again, we will be sending out links to the recordings of these presentations later on if people want to share those with others or whatnot. So with that, I think we are ready to wrap up. If there's no, waiting to see if any last minute questions pop in, but otherwise, I think we're ready to wrap up. We appreciate everyone's time who's been watching out there, and appreciate our opportunity at Real Strategies and American Strategies, excuse me, to get to work with so many great people around the country. Happy holidays to everyone, and let us know if there's anything we can do to help you with anything. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up for this month's user group meeting. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Happy holidays.